short video, you would have realized we're talking about Down syndrome. The one thing I can appreciate is the fact is that we've stopped stigmatizing as much as we did before people who suffer from this particular syndrome. There were all kinds of derogatory terms and names that we used to for people who actually suffered from Down syndrome, which seem to have fizzled away. So that's one positive out of it. But to discuss it more and educate us a lot more, we have Dr. Bote in the studio. Doc, how's it going?
I'm good. And you?
Good. I'm fine. Thank you very much. Before we get into all of this, how was your Mother's Day celebration?
It was great. I mean, I had fun, and my mom had fun.
Yes.
Generally, it was good.
You're a good son. Well done. Okay, let's talk about Down syndrome. First off, let's just give the scientific definition. What is Down syndrome?
Down syndrome. It's a genetic disorder, and it's a very common genetic disorder that results in children being born with unique physical features from the face to the toe. And it's because of an abnormality that took place during cell division.
So that's at the fetus stage.
Yeah. And it's because of what we call trisomy 21. By trisomy 21, I mean that as nice sitting there looking at me like that, or me looking at you, every human being, your cells, you have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So total makes 46.
Yeah.
You are male, I am male, somebody is female. All these 23 pairs of chromosomes, they are numbered. Position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 23. The pair. So they occur in pairs like that. So one is branched here, but they are together.
Yeah.
At the 23rd position is what you call the sex chromosomes.
Right.
So that is what determines who is a male and who is a female. So you have for the male have the X here and the Y there.
Right.
So that's males. For the female is XX.
Okay.
Now at position 21 of the same chromosome chain in your cells, there is also another pair of chromosomes there. So everybody is supposed to have two. Unfortunately, for those who are said to be Down syndrome, they seem to have, or they have 3 chromosomes over there.
In the 21.
At the 21 position. So we say that it is because of an extra chromosome hanging on the 21st pair. So eventually what happens is that when a child is born who has Down syndrome, instead of having 23 pairs, it has 23 pairs plus 1. So eventually the person has 47 chromosomes instead of 46.
So it's that one extra chromosome outside the 46
exactly border. It is that one thing that causes all the change in the person's features. And so it's for a good reason that the good book says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Indeed.
I thought you say hallelujah to that.
Hallelujah and amen. Now, what causes Down syndrome? Because I know there's been a lot of studies and there's a lot of warnings when it comes to prenatal care, or even before you even do actually get pregnant, and even warnings on certain foods, certain products, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, certain medications, that these could lead to. So what exactly is it that causes Down syndrome? Or what are some things that cause Down syndrome?
Well, so trisomy 21.
Yes.
Generally, there is no specific thing to say that maybe alcohol or drugs or directly cause Down syndrome. Neither are we going to say that it is something that the person inherited from the parents, because you see that the parents are normal physically; they look very normal.
Yeah.
Just that the child is born, and it's realized that by when in the formation of a human being or a baby, as I said, very meticulous cell division, multiplication, division here and there for a whole baby to be born, to be formed. And the slightest thing that goes wrong, everything about you changes. For example, somebody who has sickle cell disease, is the hemoglobin. There's a substitution of just 2 amino acids, valine for glutamic acid as a certain position 6, and then it turns the person into a sickle cell person. So the processes are so meticulous, but the fact that a lot of us come out normal means that
Yes.
Yeah, So in the case of the trisomy 21 or Down syndrome, it is just known that there's a third chromosome that seems to be at the position 21 in addition. So there's possibly because there's something went wrong with the cell division. So instead of having a third one gets attached.
Yeah.
And then that's in about 95% of cases. It's just because of an additional chromosome.
Yeah.
There are some instances where we call something translocation. So in that case, you have that could be a bit of inheritance, 4% in 4% of cases, where maybe in the father's system or the mother's system there was a translocation of the same chromosome 21 onto another chromosome somewhere in the person's body. So that one can be inherited. So that when the person is formed, there is an extra chromosome 21
which has already been around from
yes,
the parents.
Exactly.
Right.
So that is low. Just about 4% of people have this translocation one. There are a few people too who may have what we call the mosaic type. Not all the cells in the body are Down syndrome. Only a few may have the extra chromosome 21. So we are saying that mainly it is trisomy. 95% of the time it is an extra chromosome on the chromosome 21. A few times, 1% is the mosaic, where not all the cells in the person are down, but a few are down. And then the third and the last, which may be inheritable, may be the one that is called by translocation. Now you asked about antenatals and all these things. Yes, I mean, with advanced technology, some of these can be detected before birth. And in the advanced countries, for example, they have processes where even in the first trimester, the second trimester, the third trimester, there are things that they will do to be able to determine if this child is going to be trisomy 21. In any case, there are factors that have been realized to be contributing to somebody's chances of having a Down syndrome baby.
Okay.
The first of all is aging. I mean, chances of a woman having a baby.
Right. So people getting pregnant in the later ages.
Exactly.
Right,
so if you are in your 20s, the chance of having a Down syndrome baby is one in about 1,500 chances.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a very minimal chance. I mean, 35 and 40, you have like one chance in about 350 cases.
Okay, I've actually got some statistics here.
Okay.
Says 25 years of age has a risk of 1 in 1,250.
That's right.
30 years of age has a risk of 1 in 1,000.
That's right.
35 years has a risk of 1 in 400.
Yes.
40 years has a risk of 1 in 100.
Yes.
And 45 years and above, 1 in 30.
That's right. So these are the stats. The older you grow, the greater the chances of you having a Down syndrome baby. The eggs have
Is that because of the hormonal change in the woman as well?
Not necessarily. It's the eggs inside of you. A woman releases one egg every month, but at the time that a woman is born, all your eggs are there intact.
Right.
All right. So at the time of puberty or menarche, you start releasing your eggs, having menses. You release them one at a time.
Right.
So by the time you are releasing an egg at the age of 45, that egg is about 20 years old.
Yes.
The chances of having problem with cell division is higher.
It's higher.
So it's about the aging process. Usually about 88% of the time, it's because of the age of the woman.
Right.
Occasionally maybe because of the age of the man. That is not that frequent. It's mainly the age of the woman. So it's advised that women, if you want to do it earlier. Then it doesn't also mean that we don't have people who are in their 20s having Down syndrome children.
No, it does happen.
It does happen.
Yeah,
it does happen.
Okay, let's talk about some of the physical characteristics. We were watching the video before this segment started, and they seem to have particular characteristics. Let's describe some of them.
Yeah, the characteristics are interesting. First off, when a baby is born and it has what we call the syndromic fasces, you see the face of the child and you just go that this child may be having a syndrome. There are other syndromes. There are other Turner syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, Down syndrome, but Down syndrome is the commonest. So you see this child, and if I hold my head like this, I can hold something on my back. I mean, there's a small protrusion, my occiput. I have some convolutions of brain, I have something that I can hold. But for the Down syndrome children, they virtually have a flat head, flat back of the head. So everything there is straight and flat like that. And people who see them in town, you notice that usually they have a flat back. Then it comes to their forehead. They have this kind of flat forehead. The nasal bridge is flat. In between is very, very flat. And their eyes are a bit slanted. Not because of their ethnic orientation, like maybe people who are from the Oriental side of the world, they have this slanting of the eye. But these are normal, maybe Africans or Europeans, they have this slanting of the eye, and that is one of it. And then the iris, the black of the eye or brown of the eye, depending on where you're coming from, they have this white streaks in there, which call them the brush filled points. So like brushes inside the black of the eye. So they have this slantedness, and then the brush filled spots.
There's a picture on the screen right there of a young lady.
That's right. And they all look similar. They look alike. You see one here, you see one in Tema, you see one, and you think you've seen the same person, and you think they are related. And then you go down, and then their mouth is usually narrow. They have a narrow mouth, narrow roof in the mouth, and then they have a very large tongue. So a lot of them, you see them protruding their tongue all the time, like mostly. And then their chin is short. They have a shorter chin. Their neck is a bit broad and wide. And then it comes to, they have short arms, short everything, short fingers, everything seems to be short. I mean, generally, they go short. And then all the way down to, sometimes a lot of them have this umbilical hernia. The belly button protrudes, and they have the hernia. And then go down all the way to their toes, like you get to the toe, and realize that in between the big toe and then the second one, there's this big gap, which you call the sandal gap. So as if a child is born and has been wearing sandals for like 5 years already. Maybe he was wearing it all the time in the womb. So it's like a sandal gap over there. And then their ears, like if you take your eye, this line of the eye back, I hit my ear. Okay, so it just goes like I hit my ear. But for a Down syndrome child, usually the ear is way below. So I go straight like that and I won't hit the ear. So we call them that they have this kind of thing we call the low set ears. So these are some of the physical features that there are many that you may find in a child with Down syndrome.
I heard once that when a child is born, obviously those first cries, they can actually also tell as well if there's some kind of syndrome with the baby, because there's apparently less, or if not no crying at all at the point of birth.
Again, with the Down syndrome babies, their muscle tone is very, very weak.
Right.
It gives them even problems with sleeping and breathing and all that.
Right.
So when a child like that is born, their ability to breathe may not be as quick as a normal child. So these are all because of the muscle tone, the respiratory problems they may have, and all that. They end up having a lot of ear infections and then other congenital things. Because of this one chromosome at the position 21, a lot of them, they may be born with congenital heart problems. They have the ventricles, a septal defect, the division or the wall between the ventricles of the heart may have a hole through. They call it hole.
Is that murmur? Is that a heart murmur? Or?
No, the murmur is the sound that we hear when I put it on. Instead of boom boom.
Okay, so it's being released.
Like like there's a hoof of a sound in between the heart sound, boom boom. So they have congenital heart diseases, tetralogy, patent ductus arteriosus, and all kinds of.
Okay, I told you not to use those big words.
Okay, I don't use those words. And then also they have their chance of forming cancer of the blood is also there. Leukemias. They have ear infections a lot. They have even gastrointestinal. Just this one extra thing.
Chromosome.
So they may have, the stomach may not empty well out into the duodenum. So we call it pyloric stenosis. The pylorus of the stomach is narrow. So this child may end up vomiting more frequently. The food doesn't get out.
It doesn't get to pass through.
Or the duodenum itself is stenosed, so things don't get out. So they have a lot of challenges, and therefore, in the management of it, you need a lot of specialties to be dealing with all these things at the same time.
I was saying to you before we started, I have a cousin who has Down syndrome. One of the most amazing people I know. He's so charismatic. It literally keeps me laughing every time I'm around. Very, very, very loving, very, very entertaining. But what are some of the problems that kids or people with Down syndrome may go through mentally or socially?
Yeah, one of the things that happens to them or they come up with is low IQ.
Right.
Their intelligence quotient is very low. They progress, even their developmental milestones, the time they walk and
later.
crawl is later. So everything about them is slow. So getting into school, they are likely to be lagging behind a bit. And it's known that somebody may be about 50, a Down syndrome child may go to about 50 years old and still be having the intelligence quotient of about a 9 or 10-year-old. So that's why maybe you have a cousin and still acting funny because you see this huge guy and behaving lifestyle like a 15-year-old or a 9-year-old, and it will make you laugh. Like maybe so that those are some of the things. So they have challenges with living. Social skills, their social skills and all those things are retarded a bit. Sometimes mental retardation is also there, but society and systems are worked out to help them. I remember seeing one Down syndrome guy in one of the London buses back then, and it was cool. I mean, the guy was having his phone, talking on the phone. I'm like, whoa, this is different,
In the UK, I actually visited a ward which had some Down syndrome children in it, and when you actually see them together and them interacting, forget you. They're in their own world, and the way they interact with each other. Really and truly, we're probably the ones that have the issues. They have no issues at all. If you look on the screen right now, we have put the numbers on there. If you want to give Dr. Bote a call and ask him a question or contribute to the discussion at all, please feel free to give us a call right now. We'll be more than willing to hear from you. All right, now, let's talk about the relationships between people who have Down syndrome. Like we're saying, I mean, I've seen them in their own environment. They get along very well. Yeah. What would happen if somebody with Down syndrome met somebody else with Down syndrome and they had children?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question to ask. As I said, you have a situation where the mothers or fathers of Down syndrome children, they don't have a problem. They are okay. Yeah. But then something goes wrong. But somebody who has Down syndrome, for example, has trisomy. So we have 3 on the person 21.
Right.
Now, supposing 2 Down syndrome people meet and they have a baby. In the formation of a baby, therefore, 1 chromosome leaves from the mother, 1 leaves from the dad.
Yeah.
So let's say that this 2 and has a third one. If this one leaves from the dad, let's say the third one is more joined to this one.
Yeah.
If this one leaves from the dad and the other mother too has the single one leaving, they're going to have a normal child.
Right.
But then if this one leaves and then the 2-in-1 also leaves, then they are going to have a Down syndrome child.
Wow.
So that is how the pairing is going to go.
Okay. We've got our first phone caller on the line. We've got Paul from Sunyani. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine.
Great. What's your contribution or your question for Dr. Bote?
I want to ask the doctor whether someone when you see the person, it's like he's looking somewhere, kind of Down syndrome or what?
Okay. All right. Thank you for your question.
Okay. There's this thing we used to call alukumi, alukulondon. He's looking at you, and that is different. You can have somebody who is not Down syndrome having that kind of one eye strabismus.
Yeah.
You can have
they call it wandering eyes. No?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Down syndrome children also do have that kind of strabismus, like one eye looking somewhere and is sometimes not stable. Mm-hmm. So it may be a sign in a Down syndrome child, but then that kind of eye defect can also happen in an individual who is normal. So we are saying that Down syndrome is not just a characteristic that you take one thing at a time. I mentioned so many things, and for them, you might have about 90% of these things happening. So you have slanted eyes, you have low set ears, you have flat nose, you have narrow
back of the head,
flat head,
the limbs
short, and sometimes they are even obese. They have other problems, thyroid problems, and all kinds of problems. So these are things that you don't take in isolation. They happen in tandem. They move in tandem.
Yeah. So best thing to do is contact the doctor.
Yeah, contact them to
see if you can get a diagnosis done.
That's right.
Okay. So hopefully that helped you out, Paul. Okay, let's continue. So so there's a possibility for 2 Down syndrome folk to have normal kids.
It's possible.
It is possible. Okay. Let's talk about what's the difference between Down syndrome children and Down syndrome adults. in regards to their abilities. You said that obviously it takes a lot longer to develop. So we shouldn't be looking at the same kind of progression within, well, let's just say, people without Down syndrome as to people with those.
Yeah.
So, like you said, it's going to take longer for them to walk, longer to crawl,
to
talk,
everything, get their social skills. I mean, picking things up, reading skills,
even understanding the parents,
understanding speech problems, hearing problems. They may hear you, but they may be able to hear, but then speaking takes them much longer, and sometimes they even stutter. They when they are talking, it's like they are stammering all the time. Like the words don't really flow out too well.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things. So in these peculiar circumstances, it's not be right to maybe put them in the same grade with the kids who are not Down syndrome.
Right.
I won't say normal kids, but
Yeah,
kids who
exactly.
are not like Down syndrome. You have the special school for them so that they'll be able to grow at their own pace, so that they don't feel that I'm worse off than somebody. But when they are together, they're able to pick up. And then there are special tutors for them, bring them up, help them. So it depends. I mean, you can see an adult who's, I'm sure your cousin is not doing too badly.
No,
you can see an adult
Yeah.
who's Down syndrome and they are doing well. And again, when it comes to Down syndrome, there are different grades. The IQs are different. There are some who have maybe between 30 and 50 IQ level, some who have 50 to 70 IQ level.
So it does vary.
Yeah, it varies. It varies.
Okay, we're going back to the front lines right now. We've got George from Teshin and on the line. Good morning, George.
Good morning, sir.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
My question is, I want to know the causes of the Down syndrome
Causes.
and how it can be regulated. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
That's my question.
Thank you very much, George. Okay, so we've covered it, but let's just go over it
Hit
again.
it
Some of the causes for
Yeah.
Down syndrome.
There's no known cause for Down syndrome that a woman does anything to have such a baby, or a man does anything to have such a baby. But what has been noticed over time is that there is just a problem with cell division. Call it a mistake of nature. It's just a problem with cell division that 3 chromosomes happen to sit at a particular position instead of 2.
Yeah.
And we are assuming that in most of the cases, it's known that as a woman ages, the older the woman is, the likelihood, the chances of her having a Down syndrome child. It doesn't also mean that everybody above 40 who has a kid will have one. I know somebody who is 45 had a normal kid, and again you have somebody who is also in the 20s and had a Down syndrome child.
Yeah.
It's just a problem that happens with cell division, because so it's a rapid process that happens while the baby is forming. Within the first few weeks of a sperm meeting an egg, a lot of cell division takes place. Something could just go wrong.
Indeed.
And then so that's what happens. And then, as I said, in advanced technology, it can be picked up either from the they have what we call amniocentesis. They can just take fluid from the around the baby, and then you test that, or they can sometimes take fluid from the placenta and test that, or maybe from the umbilical cord of the baby and test that. If there are chances that the baby is Down syndrome, a decision is taken. In the UK, I think the consensus about 92% of people say that if it's so, then let's terminate it.
Yeah.
In the US, it's different. I don't know about
All right.
other places.
We've got somebody on the line at the moment. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Please, I'm Lumina calling from Achimota.
Hello, Wilhelmina. What's your question, please?
My question is, I want to know if 2 people with the same blood group can marry.
If 2 people with the same blood group. Okay. Thank you very much for your question. Doc.
Yeah, blood group has got nothing to do with compatibility of marriage. It can be O positive, your partner can be O positive, you can marry, no problem. You can be A, it can be A negative, both A negative.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. I spoke about this one where you did medical test before marriage.
Yeah.
And I said that the only thing is that unless, of course, you, the woman, you are, let's say, A negative, and the man is A positive. The man being A positive means that the baby you're going to have will also be A positive, because the negative means that empty.
Yeah.
The positive means that there's a resource factor D. So the baby will definitely have a resource factor
So
D.
it'll be a plus.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it'll be a plus. The woman doesn't have it. So when the baby is born and the separation of the baby from mother, some of the baby's blood may interact with the mother's blood. And then the mother's blood will be primed that this is positive. I don't have positive. Are they foreign bodies? Are they enemies? The mother's
start
body
fighting.
produces antibodies against the baby that will be born next.
Yeah.
So you just have to let your doctors know that my husband is positive and I'm negative. But being A, B, C, D, F, G, G, that doesn't matter. It's the positive and negative.
I think
that
also
we're
the
interested
conversation we were having earlier about the breach of promise in marriage. Maybe some people are just checking their status.
Yeah, you know.
We've got another caller on the line, Clifford from Kumasi. Good morning, Clifford.
Yes, my case is not Down syndrome, but I have a child 3 years old.
Okay.
But she cannot talk. She can't talk, but she can hear. She can run around. She's very active, but she cannot talk as of now. She's in school, but she just likes to play alone. She doesn't play with other children.
Okay. Have you visited a doctor or had a diagnosis been done?
Yeah, we visited a doctor, but he's on a drug.
Okay.
He's taking a drug. The doctor has not told me that the problem is this. The only thing is that he will talk.
Okay. All right, Dr. Bote, I'll leave this in your professional hands.
Yeah. When kids are born, usually they will test hearing. Speech comes later on. But it's assumed that with a child after hearing done and the child can hear, it's expected that with time the child hearing would be able to pick up speech. Now, a lot of people also come and say that there is a tongue tie under the child's tongue. That's why the child can't talk. It's neither here nor there. So they always come and cut this thing. That's why, or that my child will not be able to talk. They go to have the tongue tied, then they are talking. Now, if the child is not able to talk, we need to find out why the child is not talking. And in this circumstance, sometimes we have speech therapists who these things are referred to. So audiology, or they do the audios, they do the speech therapy, and probably be able to help the child. It may be a nerve problem. It may be some other kind of problem for which reason the child is not talking. I will not be able to sit here and say what specifically is.
Yeah.
But when we get to somebody who is into speech therapy, they'll be able to unravel.
But at the point
mystery
where the
behind.
doctor has prescribed medication, he should, in his professional capacity, be explaining to the parents exactly what's wrong or what he's treating with the medication.
Yeah, well, so I don't know which kind of medication the child is on to help talk. I don't know what the doctor has diagnosed, but I think for this one, a speech therapist is needed.
Okay.
And then
Or maybe even get a second diagnosis.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. We're going back to the phone lines now. We've got Kenneth from Takrady. Good morning, Kenneth.
Okay, yes, I'm Kenneth.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. What's your question or contribution, please?
If I want to ask if something can be done to prevent Down syndrome.
Okay. Doc, we've answered this already. It's just a genetic abnormality.
Nothing can be done to prevent Down syndrome. You never know. There's nothing you can do about it because people still, are giving.
You can be the healthiest person.
Yeah, you can be the healthiest person, but it could just happen because people still are active, sexually, and people get pregnant in their 40s. Not because sometimes it just happens that they get pregnant and they still want to have their babies anyway. So unless, of course, as I said, it's determined prenatally, then a decision can be taken. But otherwise, if it's not detected, then you're going to have your baby and it's Down syndrome.
Funny enough, we're talking about causes, and I mentioned earlier on. There were people saying, alcohol and tobacco and everything can be related to it. But there was one study that related Down syndrome births to prolonged drug abuse.
You see, these things, as I said, they may have a long-term effect on your system. Prolonged alcohol use, prolonged all these things. But if it's a study that was done, I won't dispute that at all. Because you use drugs, you end up causing a lot of damage to your system. So it can go on to affect your cell division. And again, as I said, about 4% of the cases of Down syndrome are because of translocation. Translocation means that it's not like you have a full third there, but in the parent.
Yeah.
That's a heritable one.
Yeah.
In the parent, you have, say the person has been abusing drugs, alcohol, and all these things. So you have a translocation within the parent that chromosome 21, part of it goes to sit on another chromosome in the parent. And then cell division takes place, a baby is formed. And because that part of the chromosome 21 has sat on the parent's chromosome elsewhere, it's also transferred to a baby. So at the end of the day, you have the new baby that is born having an extra chromosome 21 sitting somewhere in the system. So the whole thing about Down syndrome is an extra chromosome 21 sitting somewhere.
You see. Okay. People have tried to treat Down syndrome, and I'm sure that, you know, even here in this country, where there are children that are born and they don't know exactly what's wrong in them, they've probably been to spiritualists, they've probably been to churches, been misdiagnosed, been stigmatized. So what is it, or how can you actually, sorry, one moment. We have Pokwa on the line from Achimota. Pokwa, good morning.
Good morning. I want to find out the difference between an autistic child and a Down syndrome child, because I have a cousin who behaves very, very abnormal sometimes. Like he's almost 20, but all his playmates are like 9, 10, 6-year-olds, and he's not in school. So I just want to know the differences. You can help me with that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. I'll let you answer that, but first off, it's more like the physical characteristics, wouldn't it be? Because with autistic children, there's nothing
exactly
on the outside that you could actually...
Beautiful. So the autistic child also has severe mental disabilities, okay? But then it is not because of a chromosomal abnormality. But with the Down syndrome, you see that even some Down syndrome kids can become autistic as well.
Right.
They may have autism as well,
yes,
as part of the whole syndrome. But with the Down syndrome, you have the clear physical characteristics: slanted eye, brass-filled spores, flat nose, narrow small chin, protruding tongue all the time. Sometimes the saliva will be drooping from their mouth all the time, low set ears. So you see the physical characteristics. As a matter of fact, to diagnose Down syndrome postnatal is physical characteristics.
It's physical, yeah.
But with autism, you get to know it later on. My child is,
So, for instance, George, who called earlier, who said that the child was basically looking in another direction, that's also a characteristic of some kids who actually have autism.
Exactly.
Well.
Yeah. So, as I said, you don't just take one. A Down syndrome child could also be autistic, but not all autistic children are Down syndrome.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about stigmatization and misdiagnosis. On that basis, there will be people who will still have this notion in the back of their mind that this child could be cured, could be healed. So, is there a cure? Is there a heal for Down syndrome?
No, there's no cure for it. If you have such a child and you go into the spiritual homes, prayer camps, and all these things, you are wasting your time and your money. It's for you to understand. Usually, it comes as a shock to the parents, worry, guilt. They feel sorrowful. Did I do anything to cause this? That kind of anger is there. But this managing this kind of thing means sitting the parents down and talking to them, explaining to them that listen, we can still integrate these children into society. We can build a world for them that they can also enjoy life. We can have them go to school at their own pace. They can pick things up at their own pace. So that kind of acceptance thing should come into the family. The parents should be able to understand and be able to live. There are people who have children who have what we call cerebral palsy. They are stiff all the time, stiff like that.
That's right.
And it's sorrowful, but we have...
So it's something that we just have to be able to deal with.
Yes, it's about coping with it.
Yeah.
You just have to cope with it.
Okay, good stuff. I believe we do have another caller on the line. Good morning, Mutala. No, apologies for that. Okay, so it can't be cured and it can't be prevented. So at this point in time, if somebody comes to your hospital, they give birth, and it is a Down syndrome child, what are the options for them? Do we have schools for the disabled? Is there extra postnatal health care that's given to these parents? Because obviously they're going to be going through something completely different than somebody who's just given birth to somebody without these challenges.
Yeah, that's very true. When you have a Down syndrome child, take heart. It's going to be a little bit of more work to do, because as I said, apart from the physical features that they have other health problems. they easily get ear infections, and they even get like eye problems. Cataracts are very common in them. So you need to, as I said, they can have leukemias, congenital heart diseases. So regularly they have to be checked on. All these things will be looked at. So the first thing is to find a health professional who you can trust to be able to guide you through, so that this child will be monitored regularly. Regular checks on the heart, regular checks on the blood, to make sure that there's nothing like this lymphoblastic leukemias coming up. The heart is there, through the ears are all there. So it's a matter of having a whole team of professionals looking at your child. It may be a bit difficult, but I'm sure no mother will still say that because I have a Down syndrome child, I'm going to show you how we know. So, but there's help if you want the help. The pediatric units have pediatric neurologists. They have pediatric endocrinologists to check on the thyroid. So there's a whole spectrum of help that you need. So that when like to forestall any negative thing happening to the child, if these things are tested, quickly can be intervened so that the child will still have a blissful
good duration of life to enjoy.
There's some live all the way to 50, 60 years.
Yeah, I've heard that too. We've got Abna from Obuasi on the line right now. Good morning, Abna.
Hello, good morning.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Please, I want to ask whether this Down syndrome, does it have anything to do with this asphyxia? Like you give birth to the baby and the baby don't cry, maybe because the baby was breached. So the baby has some problem and the baby does not, did not cry. So because of that, the baby is like, he or she will be down and she's there. The doctors sometimes said the child cannot delay growth. I don't understand. So I want to know the difference between asphyxia child and the complications of a child being asphyxia at birth and then this Down syndrome. Does it lead to Down syndrome? I don't understand. I want you to explain it to me.
All right. Thank you very much for your question. Very good question.
Yeah, good one. When a child is born, the genetic processes would have taken place already. The chromosomes, everything is formed. So the child comes out, and if it's Down syndrome, it's Down syndrome. If it's Turner syndrome, Turner syndrome. Turner syndrome is where you have a girl who is supposed to be XX at the chromosome 23, but then has rather XO. That means that one spot is empty. The daddies only didn't enter, the mothers only didn't enter. So it's XO. They are very short stature, and their reproductive life becomes funny. Now, when you talk of birth asphyxia, that one is the immediate thing that happened between baby coming out from the womb.
So during labor?
Yeah. The things that happen during labor and then the first few 10 minutes of life.
Right.
So the baby comes up, it's not breathing well, or there's a problem, and then the baby doesn't even try to take in air. So what happens is that there is the oxygen in the child, the blood of the child doesn't get oxygenated to carry oxygen to the brain, to feed the brain, and within those few minutes, it can cause that the lack of oxygen or hypoxia to the brain can cause a lot of damage to brain cells. So, these brain cells is what actually leads to your nerves and all these things, getting you to contract or relax and all that. So when that thing happens, a Down syndrome child can also have birth asphyxia. A normal child can also have birth asphyxia. So with the birth asphyxia, it eventually ends up with the child having destroyed some of the neurons in the brain, and then the child has what we call cerebral palsy. So this child will sometimes maybe too relaxed, or sometimes it may be too stiff.
Jerking,
So that's the main difference. I mean, birth asphyxia is totally different, and Down syndrome is different. A Down syndrome child can come out, and then if processes are not handled well or it doesn't cry, it may have birth asphyxia and cerebral palsy in addition to Down syndrome. So these things can...
The process of birth is very intricate.
Yeah.
All right, we have Akria on air. Good morning, Akria.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great. What's your question or contribution, please?
I have a son about 1.5 years. 1 year, 6 months.
Okay.
But he's not yet swollen and he can't stand still.
Okay. Have you seen
and I want to ask if it's located to any of these sicknesses.
Okay. Have you seen a doctor yet, Akira?
Yes, when he was born, I was told he had jaundice or something like that, but They told me it's all right, so I brought him home.
Okay, and since then you haven't been back, no?
Good neurologist there. So they run a neurology clinic for children. So if your child is not walking at the age of 1.5 years, it's a cause for concern. It's not even crawling.
No.
It's not even crawling. Wow, so the baby is always just lying down, always carrying there may be something wrong. I mean, it's neurological. So it will be important for her to see the pediatric neurologist there. It's a very good one over there who can help her out.
Equilibrium.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
so
it may not be related, not at all, to Down syndrome.
Yeah.
Down syndrome children don't have that kind of stark factor of
not moving or
paralysis. No.
Okay.
This may be a form of paralysis or something, but it needs to be checked out.
Okay. Ekria, please get along to the doctor as soon as possible for them to give another diagnosis. Okay, Doc. So, what is there anything that we've missed out at all? Because I'm